Hi guys, good morning. So in the last session, we have discussed about your active standby concept. Okay. We discussed about active standby. Okay. In the active standby, the first case we covered when you were using only stateless link. The second case we saw was you were using separate, stateless, and stateful link. And the third case we covered was single, stateless, and stateful link. Okay, this was the part we covered in the last session. So any doubt in that part to anyone? No? Okay, great. So today we'll be going with the active activity role. Now, what does it mean with the active activity? So in the active standby, what was happening that, if we consider the case of your active standby, so we were having a topology, something like you have your ASA, and then you have one more ASA here. These are the two ASA boxes. And then let's say you have service provider on the outside. One switch on the inside. Here we were having our ISP. So we were basically using a router here. And here we had one router. So this is how our topology was, right? And this is how our topology was. So here what we were doing, we were having two ASAs. Let's say this is your ASA1. And this one is your ASA2. Okay. And the ASA1, we were saying that, okay, this is your primary unit. ASA2, we were saying this is your secondary unit. Okay. And the roles that they were having, so your active firewall was, your primary firewall was active, and ASA2 is on the standby. This is your internet or ISP, you can say. Then we were using failover link. So right now I'm just considering that you just have one single link that you're using as a stateless and stateful. This is how our topology was. So here, tell me one thing. At a time, how many firewalls will be forwarding the traffic? Only one, right? So if at a time only one firewall is forwarding the traffic, what about the second firewall? Let's say, what if my firewall one does not go down?
That will be in standby mode. Like first, if
It will
so,
always remain in the standby mode. That means it will just be there, but not forward any traffic. It will just be there, but it will not forward any traffic. Okay. So kind of, can I say that if my ASA1 doesn't go down, this is just like waste, right? If my ASA1 is not going down, so as long as my ASA1 is up, ASA2 will just sit there, nothing else. So what we can do here, we can do something like, okay, if you have two departments, so we can use both the firewalls, okay, to forward the traffic. Like for one department, ASA1 will be active. For second department, ASA2 will be active. Okay. So like as per the last example, if we consider, so far we have been taking the example of your that one department you have sales and the second department you have is HR. Okay. Now we can say that your ASA1 should be active for sales and ASA2 should be active for HR. Now we need standby also. So for HR, we can make your ASA2 as a standby. Okay. And here I can make my ASA1 as standby. Okay. If we consider the normal scenario, for sales, active and standby concept, I require two firewalls. And for HR, active and standby firewall concept, I require two firewalls. So total, how many firewalls I require here? Two for the sales, two for the HR, because in both cases we require active and standby. Okay, we want redundancy in each case for each department. So total of four firewalls we require. But again, if I buy four, then that will be a very costly solution for me, for my organization. Okay, and I don't want any sort of such concept. Okay, so what we can do here, we can use your contexting. We can use the multi-context concept. So what we can do that in each firewall, we can create contexts. Okay, so see, after creating the context and having two departments, how our topology is going to look like. Understand this thing. So I have my one firewall here. I have another firewall here. Okay, and I'm saying that I have two departments. So for sales department, let's say I have a switch. And for HR department, I have a switch. Let's keep it here. This is a sales guy. This side, this is a HR. Okay. And then on the outside, we just have input. So for outside also, we will require one switch. Now, in here, in these firewalls, I have to create what? Context. So let me create. And here also. Create it. This is my sales. Okay. So I'm saying this is my C1. This is C2. C1, C2. So let's say here that your C1 is for sales and C2 is for HR. Okay. So I'm saying that this is my ASA1. Okay. This is my ASA1. This is my ASA2. Okay. So for my sales, whatever the context I have created, so for my sales, ASA1 should be active. So that means this one has to be active. And ASA2 is going to be standby. Okay. Then for my HR, ASA2 should be active, ASA1 should be standby. So far, clear? Okay, great. Now, we have the interfaces, and we all know that the interfaces in case of active standby concept, they should be same. So if I am connecting, let's say, the E0 interface to the sales. Okay, this is what I'm saying is this is sales. This is sales. This one is HR. Okay, so the E0 interface, if I'm connecting to the sales, that means my standby interface should also be what? E0. This is clear. That same interface we are connecting from the active and from the standby. Same way, if you are connecting the E1 interface to the HR, that means for the standby also it should be which interface? E1. Okay. Then on the outside, we are going to use a single interface only. Remember the shared interface concept? In the multi-context we have discussed. Correct? So that concept we will use here. That single ISP we are using. So that means the outside interface will be shared. So this interface, if it is E2, so this also has to be E2. Okay. Then this is connected to the service provider. And these are connected here. Then we will have a failover interface. So this is the failover interface. Let's say E3. So far, any doubt how the topology will be? Is it clear? Great. This is your internet. This is your let's say sales server. Sales. Okay. Now on the inside for the sales, we will be using 10110/24. Okay. On this side, we will be using 10220/24. And on the outside, we will be using 11110/24. And on the failover, 10330/24. Okay. Then active IP from the 10 network, here we will keep .10. standby IP will be dot 11. Okay. Same way for the HR also, active IP will be dot 10, standby IP will be dot 11. Now here on the failover, so primary firewall dot 10, then secondary dot 11. Like this we will use. Okay. Now on the outside interface. Now this is a shared interface. Okay. This is a shared interface. So see how the IP address on the E2 will be. So what do you think? How many IP addresses will be assigned to the E2 interface? How many IP addresses?
We'll assign two.
Sorry,
We'll assign two, one for active and one for standby.
one for active and standby of T1. Okay. Yes.
In ASA1 itself, we'll assign to
See, two IPs will be there for active and standby for C1, and two IPs will be there for active and standby for C2. So a total of how many IPs will be required here? 4 IPs. Okay. So understand here, we are talking about E2 interface. Okay. So for sales, active IP will be, let's say, for sales, active IP equals to dot 10 and standby, let's say, dot 11. This is what we will use. Okay. For HR also we require. So for HR, active IP we will use, let's say, dot 100 or let's say dot 110, and standby we will use dot 111. This is how we can use. So a total of how many IPs will be required here? 4 IPs. Okay. This is clear. So that means on this side, it will be, let's say, dot 10. And here for the standby concept, it will be dot R. Then here active IP, let's say dot 110. And here standby IP, let's say dot 2. Here dot 125 we can use. Here also we can use dot 125. And here also we can use dot 125. This is how our entire addressing is going to be. Okay. Now here, how the failover and everything will be configured. Okay, so here we have to create something called as failover group. Okay, we will have to create failover groups. Okay, and we have to assign these failover groups to the context. Whatever the context, sales and HR, you will create. So to these contexts, we will provide membership of the group. So one of the group, let's say you will create here 2 groups, one for the primary. Okay. One for the primary and second one for the secondary. Okay. These are the, let's say, 2 groups you will create. So now, let's say everything you will be working on the primary firewall. So we will consider your ASA1 as a primary firewall. Okay. So here you will say that, okay, here C1 will be a part of it. and here C2 will be a part of it. Okay, or you can say sales or HR. Here you can say your sales will be part of one group and your HR will be part of second. Okay, so this is how we will be. Now, once you assign this, after that normal active standby concept, you have to configure here. Okay, and like in the last session, I also mentioned that here we will combine few concepts. What are the concepts that will be combined? One is your context. Okay, multi-context concept will be required here. Second concept that will be required is your failover concept, that is your active standby concept, and the third concept that will be required here is dynamic, or simply let me say inactive will be required. These are the three concepts that will combine, and after combining these three, we will get your you can say active concept. Okay, now what are the steps? So let me tell you the steps. If you follow the steps, this will be easier. So first thing we will do is change mode to multiple. In both the firewalls, just go and change the mode to multiple. Yeah, for E3 interface, single IP is enough because this is a failover interface. Okay, and this interface we will be using as a stateless and stateful, so single IP will be sufficient. Okay. Now see here, first of all, you will change the mode, then bring up failover interface. Okay. Give the no shutdown command to your failover interface. Number 3, okay. Once you do this, after that, we will move towards the contexting. So we will create the context. Okay. After creating the context, we will allocate the interfaces. Once you allocate the interface, you can say save the context to flash by giving the URL. Okay. After that, we will create the failover groups. Create failover groups. Then we will assign groups or contexts to the groups. That means basically we'll provide the membership of groups to the contexts. Okay. Once this is done, then after configure dynamic path. That is also interface level we have to configure because outside interface we are sharing. Okay. Then after enable safety. Okay. So this is it. These are the steps that you can follow. Okay. So if you follow these steps, then there won't be any problem. So let's go and follow these steps. First of all, we'll design the lab. Okay. server is down. Okay, we have the communication. This was the active standby. Say active, active. Failover. So we'll take two ASAs. This is ASA1, then we require three switches. See here, you can use a single switch also. In here, instead of these two, we can use a single and you can create VLANs. Okay, but I don't want to confuse. So right now we are using two different switches. Okay, only one. Require on the outside. And then one router we require to be used as ISP. So we connect. Then two routers we require on the outside. This is sales inside. This one is your HR outside. your sales switch. This is outside. Okay. Now let's talk about connection. So E0 connected here. So E0 of this will also be connected here. Then E1 interface to the HR. E1 interface to the HR. E2 on the outside. E2 on the outside. Then E3 as a failover link. So E3 will be used as a failover link. This connection and here also this connection. Okay. Now let's talk about the IP addresses. Okay. So we will create two contexts. One is sales site having the network 10.110/24. This is sales insight. This is your HR insight. And then this is outside. Which is 11.1. And then one in we are going to have here, which is the payload, or I'll say HA. Then 3. Smaller. Now, let me bring up all the devices. Now here, your sales will be active. And this one will be your HR is active. Here, your HR context will be standby. Here, your sales will be standby. Okay, the IP addresses. So here we are going to have 10.1.110. On this E0 interface, we will have 10.1.1.11. Then In here, we are going to have 10 to 10. Here we are going to have 10 to now. Then on the outside, we will have 11 as an active for sales. And this is for sales. Sales. Here sales IP will be 11. Now, now. Let me say here your sales is active. This is your sales active IP. This is your sales standby IP. Which will be 11. On this side, HR active IP 110. Here HR standby IP triple on. This is going to be 125. Going to be 125. Plus 1 is going to be 120. Okay. Then two failover groups we will be creating here. So your failover group 1. So this will be active for this one we will assign to sales. And your failover group 2, this one we will assign to your HR. And here the IPs will be .10 and .11. This side .10. This side it will be .11. So the lab topology is clear. Okay. Now let's talk about the configuration. So first we will write the configuration for your sales inside, HR inside, and internet. Okay. So I think I can take a reference of the previous configurations we have that is available in the drive. Here we will write the configuration. And multiple active standby. We should have the internet configuration here. Yeah. So the same configuration I use it. This is for HR inside. Yes, we have to change the icons. We got two. And here also we got two. For a chat, we have the network 10.2.2.2. For the sales is fine. Sales. These are basic configurations only that we have just assigned with the IP addresses, and we have enabled telnet and SSH. So anybody having doubt in these configurations, because we have been repeating these configurations multiple times. So these basic configurations of these routers, these should be clear to everyone, right? Okay, great. Then let's paste these configurations. So I'll take an access. First of all, ASA1, ASA2, ASA1, ASA2. And then we have your sales. We have your HR. And we have the internet. Now, now let's copy and paste the configurations. Sales inside. Now, once we do these configurations, then we will start following these steps one by one. Okay. This is sales insight. And then we have child insight. And this is HR insight configuration. And then we have the internet. And this is the internet. And let's check. The top reset should be 0 by 0, 0 by 0, 0 by 0. Okay. Interface is up front. You also see on the internet, by mistake, I have configured Z0 by 1. So this one should be 0 by 0. 0 by 0. Copy. Here it is fine. Here also it's fine. Only the internet. So interface is default interface to the 051. And we have given. So okay, now it's good. So let's check about the IP addresses. Show IP interface brief, and we have the do here. So IP is set, interface is up, all good. Interface brief, the interface is up, IP is assigned, also good. Interface brief. Here also everything is good. Now let's talk about the ASA configuration. This is ASA1, this is ASA2. Now we will just follow the steps. Okay, see here. First step, change the mode to multiple. Okay, let's go and change the mode. So enable configuration formula. I would say mode. Change it to multiple. ASA2 mode changed. Enable configuration formula. Change mode to multiple. Okay, that was the first step. Second, bring the failover interface up. So your E3 is the failover interface. We have to bring up this interface. So let's go and bring the interface up. This is coming up. And the reason this concept is known as your active, because see, right now what is happening, that here it is active, it is standby, active, standby. Now you go to the any firewall, and if you say show failover, so generally what do you see? That you see something like this host, then you see primary, and below you see active. Then you see other host, secondary, and you see standby ready. Correct? Whenever we check so far about the failover, this was the output we were seeing when we say show failover state. Okay, and even if the failover happens, so again only one firewall will be active. But in this case, right now, the scenario that we have, in this case, what will happen? In this case, when you will check, so it will tell you for the failover groups. It will tell you for the contacts. Okay, and if failover happens here, okay, in case if failover happens here, so right now this is active, this is standby, active. Okay, so if any of the firewall goes down, let's say this firewall goes down, your ASA1 is down. Now what will happen? C2, this is already active, so there will be no change in the state. But your C1 context, this was standby. So this will change its state to active. And when you will give this command show failover state, here you will see what? Active. Because for the group one, it will become active as your primary is down. For the group 2, it is already active. So this will be your active concept. So I'll show you when we use the command. Okay. So hopefully now your is up. Yes. Configuration terminal. Let me change the host name. Let me say ASA1. Okay. And the second step was we have to bring up the interface. We have to bring up your failover interface. So failover interface is E3. So I'll say interface E3 to shut down. This interface is up. Okay. Now, what is the next step? Create the context. So we have to create the context. Let's do it. Okay. And on the ASA2 also first, I will bring up the failover interface. Interface E3. No shutdown. Okay, let's create the context. So I'll say context, and I'm creating one for sales. Let me keep the name as small one. Context created. Then we have to do what? We have to allocate the interface. So what are the interfaces that I have to allocate to the E1 context? Sorry, I mean, what are the interfaces that I have to assign or allocate to your sales context? E0 to 3. Is it? Do we assign failover interface to the context? Do we assign your failover interface in the context? No, right? We assign, see here. This is your active standby configuration. Okay, that we performed. Your interface E3 and E2, they were the failover interface. So these interfaces you will not assign. These are for the firewall. Okay, these you will not assign. In the context, you assign inside and outside interface. Clear? So we will assign E0 and E2 interface, inside and outside. So let's allocate the interfaces. So I'll say allocate interface, and I'll say here E0, and let's name E0 as inside. And same way, let's name your E2 interface as outside, so that later on we don't get confused. Okay, but why the name is not clear? Allocate interface E2. We have given the name out. Okay, we'll check about it. We should get this kind of pop-up. Okay, that map name for existing interface has been updated. Okay, this is one interface. Then we will configure the URL. So config URL sales.cft. Okay, this is done. That was the next step. That you allocate the interface and save the configuration to the flash. So same thing we'll do for the HR context also. Context HR. Allocate interface. Now in the HR, what are the interfaces? One will be E1 and second one will be E2. These are the interfaces that you will assign to your HR context. So let's say E1 is the inside and E2 as the outside. The pop-up is not coming. Why? E1, E2. Okay. This is done. Configure the URL. Configure URL HR.ch. Then say write memory. Okay. So we have gone up to this step. Now, before moving further, I will check whether these interface names have been proper or not. So change to context sales, show interface IPv. Yes, names it has taken. Change to context HR, show interface IPv. Yeah, here is also fine. Okay. Then let's go back to the change to system. Okay. So up till here we have done. Now next what we have to do, we have to create the failover groups. Okay, so how do you create the failover group? The command is very simple. The command is failover group, and here you can see how many groups you can create. 2 groups you can create. So let's create group number 1. Okay, if you see in this group, who has the higher priority? Primary, or you can say secondary. So in group 1, we will say primary will have, and in group 2, secondary will have. Okay, so here I'll say that here primary will have higher priority, and also here we can allow preemption. Okay, preemption means high priority will automatically become active. This concept is not there in your active standby, but it is there in your active active. Okay, so you will say preempt. Done. This is your group 1 created. Second, you will say failover group 2. In this group, your secondary firewall will have high priority. And secondary means by default standby. So because entire configuration we will be doing on your ASA1 only. So see here, 2 groups we have created. Here, primary will have high priority, and in the second group, in the first group primary, and in the second group, secondary will have high priority. So primary means active will have high priority, and secondary means here standby will have high priority. Okay. So what will happen here? C2 is there, here C1 is there. So in this case, C1 will automatically become active on this firewall, and C1 will become standby on the second firewall. In this case, in the C2 context, what will happen? Standby has higher priority. Standby means, sorry, secondary has high priority. That means your standby. So here automatically this will become what? Standby, and the other firewall will become what? Active. Okay, this is why we are creating the failover groups. Okay, now your secondary has high priority, and we will enable the preemption. That's it. 2 failover groups we have created. After creating the failover groups, next thing is what? You will assign the context to the groups. Okay, so these contexts, they will join the groups. How? You will say context sales context, and you give the command join failover group and group number 1. Same way, context HR, and here you will say join failover group number 2. Now these contexts, they have joined the failover groups. Now what do we need to do? We just need to go and configure dynamic path. This thing we will configure inside the context, but before that, let's go. Okay, let me change this. I think order it will be changed because this configuration will do later. First, we will enable the failover. Then after, we will configure the dynamic path so that these guys they can communicate on the outside internet. So how do you enable the failover? So let's go and configure the failover. Here you will see failover LAN unit primary. ASA1 is the primary unit, ASA2 will be the secondary unit. Okay, and single link we are using as a stateful and stateless. So I'll say failover LAN interface. Let's name it failover FO. And the interface is what? E3. Your E3 interface is being used as a failover interface. Now this is stateless configuration for stateful failover link. Name is FO and interface is E3. So this became stateful configuration. Now failover interface IP. Okay, and let's configure the IP for which interface? Failover interface. Name of the interface is failover, and active IP will be 10.3.3.10.255.255.255.0, and standby IP will be 10.3.3 loud. Done. Now same sort of configuration we have to go and do it on the second firewall. Let's see. Now if I say show history, this is the configuration we have done so far. Okay, that we created the context, we allocated the interface, created the URL, then returned to the flash. After that, we created the failover group. We said primary and secondary, preemption enabled. Then these contexts, they join the failover groups, and now we are enabling the failover. Okay, so for enabling the failover, only one command will change. That is, instead of primary, here in the second firewall, this will become secondary. So let me just go and copy these commands as it is. ASA2 interface E3 is already up. You will say failover LAN. This unit is what? Secondary, and remaining configuration as it is. Okay, now all we need to do is just enable the failover. How do you enable the failover? You will say failover. And here also you will say failover. Okay. Now wait for it. So ASA1, no active mate detected. ASA2 detected an active mate. Configuration replication is going well. Okay, see all the contexts are getting created. Okay, end of configuration replication. Now you will see that the groups will also be created. See, group 1 detected active mate, group 2 detected active mate, and still group 1 and group 2, no response from me. And now that preemption will take place. See, group 2 preempt mate. So that means your ASA2 for the group 2, it is becoming active. Group 2 means what? Your HR. So for the HR, your group 2 is active. And here for the group 1, this ASA1 will become active. Okay. So let's check. Show failover state. So you can see this host is primary. For the group 1, it is active. For the group 2, it is standby. The other host who is secondary, for the group 1, it is standby, and for the group 2, it is active. Is it clear? This is the default situation. So you can say ASA1 active for the sales, okay, and standby for the HR. Same way, ASA2 standby for sales, active for HR. Is it clear? Yes or no? Okay. Now, what do we need to do? We need to do the configuration for the context. That means assigning IP address and everything. So let me check show failover. So this is how it is showing, and you can see here we have stateful failover, E3 interface, and also your stateless interface E3. Okay. All right. So let's do the context configuration. So let me see, change to context sales. Okay. Now for the sales, inside IP address is 10.1.1.10, outside is 11.1.1.10. Okay. These are the active. Standby IPs will be .11 and .11. See how we will configure. Show interface IP brief. So interfaces are in the down state. Why? Because we have to bring them up in the system context. So let me do one thing. Let me bring all the interfaces up. Change to system. Interface E0. No shutdown. Interface E1. No shutdown. Interface E2. No shutdown. Now let me go change to context sales. Show interface IP. Great. So the interfaces are up. Now let's configure. Interface inside IP address 10.1.1.10.255.255.255.0. This is active IP. Standby IP will be 10.1.1 loud. Interface outside IP address 10. Okay, it is outside 11.1.1 10 255.255.255.0, and for standby it is 11.1.1 loud. Okay. Then we will configure dynamic path interface level so that these guys they can communicate over the internet. So I'll say object network inside network subnet 10.1.1.0.255.255.255.0 NAT. Okay, name if I haven't assigned. Interface inside name it inside. Sorry. Wrong name assigned. Name it inside security level 100. Show name it. So your inside interface has the name inside and security level 100. Interface outside. Name it outside. Let's check. Now, okay. Let's go back to our object. So we said object network, then we assigned a subnet to it. And now we will configure dynamic path from inside to outside. Dynamic interface. This is done for this context. Let's change to the context. Change to context picture. Show interface IP brief. IP addresses are unassigned. Interface inside. Okay. Now do you see what it says? Configuration application is not performed from standby unit to configuration replication is not performed from standby unit to active configurations are no longer synchronized. So what does it mean? That here for the HR context, who is active? ASA2. So for HR context, I'll have to go and do the configuration here. Okay. Change to context HR. Show interface IP grid. Interface same site. Name it. Before failover, if we had done the configuration, then this thing would haven't like this thing wouldn't be a problem. But we have already enabled failover. IP address 10. So inside IP address for your HR is 10.2.2. 10.2.2. 10.2.5.5.2. 0. And by 10.2.2 last. Interface outside. Name it outside. IP address. So outside IP address for your HR is active 110, standby 111. 11.11, 110, 255.255.255.0. For the standby, it is 11.11. Done with the configuration. Let's enable dynamic path, object network, inside network, the subnet is 10.2.0, 255.255.255.0. Then we want to perform nav from inside to outside. It is dynamic and interface work. So all the configurations are done. Let's check. Ping 10.11.10. Am I able to ping? Yes, I am able to ping. What about 11.11.125? So ICMP not enabled. Okay, and one more thing we have to do here, because we are using a shared interface. So we have to say MAC address also. In this thing also, you can see. And if you want ICMP, then you can say in the individual context, you can say fix up protocol ICMP. Change to context sales. I can say fixer protocol ICMP. And same thing for the HR context, which is active this site. We can say fixer protocol ICMP. Okay, let's check. Now, so you can see outside internet communication I have. From the HR also I have communication. Ping 11.11. See. So I am able to communicate. And right now, if I check, change to system. So, okay. So here, what is happening? Right now, we have an active standby pair for each context. Okay. Now, let me write all the configuration. Write everything. Here also, you can see both sides. It is taking effect. All the configuration and everything are written. Now, let's say one of your firewall goes down. Okay, so we'll consider your ASA1 goes down. Let me stop. Now we'll check the state on the ASA2 firewall. See here. Change to system. to failover. Okay, so far still active standby test showing. See, what do we have? For group 1 active, for group 2 also active. And this is your active concept. Okay, and if you have a session ongoing, so that session will not be dropped because we are using the stateful configuration. Okay, now let's say your firewall will come back up. Start. Let's restart session. So now what will happen? For the sales, again your ASA1 will become active because preemption was enabled. So what is the configuration that we have done? Let me show. Your active configuration. So ASA1, we are saying this is your primary AD. ASA2, this is your secondary AD. Okay. Now you will bring up the failover interfaces. So on the ASA1, you will see interface. Terminal. And then after interface, let's say all the interfaces you bring up because all of them will require interface. Show interface interface E3. Look at that. Then after you read the context. Okay, so on the ASA1 only we will create the context. Same interface one will be E0, name will be inside, another one will be E2, which will be outside, config URL, start here, and it from here. And same thing you create for HR. In the HR, it will be E1. Okay. Once you create an outcome, then you create the payload group. We will say payload group 1. And say this is primary, and you will enable the preemption. In one payload, you will see secondary preemption. You will enable. Then, if you want, you can do the configuration for your context. But before that, let's assign context sales join payload group 1. Then you can do remaining configuration like interface inside. Okay. inside IP address 10.1.1.10. Standby IP address 10.1.1 log. Then we can say interface outside, unit outside, IP address 11.1.1.10.255.255.0 and standby IP address will be 11.1.1. Okay. Once this is done, then we will enable back object network inside network. Subnet zero stay and inside outside dynamic network. So your sales context configuration done. Then for the HR, you will join the payload group 2. IP address will be 10.2.10 and standby will be 10.2.2 on the inside. While on the outside, this will be 110 and 111. Here, this will be okay. Then this means we change to system. Okay. You can use the MAC address auto comment. Then you will enable the payload. You will see payload LAN unit primary. Payload LAN interface. Name is FO and interface is info. Then you will say payload link FO info. Then you will say payload interface IP for the FO interface. So IP will be 10.3.10.255.255.255.0 and standby IP will be 10.3.3 log. Okay, this is your ASA1 configuration done. If you want, you can enable the payload also. Okay, then on the ASA2, all you need to do is just go and enable the payload. On ASA2, enable configuration terminal, interface, E3, interface, interface, then same sort of configuration. This unit, you will make it as a secondary unit. Okay. Remaining everything will remain same. And this is your entire active configuration by following all these steps. This is clear. I'll save it to your drive. Copy. Active. Save. Now the firewall is already up, and you can see here your ASA1 is saying your group 1 preempt me. You check to reload. So now for group 1 again, your ASA1 is active, ASA2 is standby. And same thing you can check here. This is clear. So this is your active concept. Any doubt? Yes or no? Yes, guys, any doubt? No doubts? Okay. Now after this, next concept we have is about interface level failover. Then we have your clustering. Okay, these are the things remaining. Have you performed dynamic routing in your ASA? Guys, have we done dynamic routing, like enabling OSPF, PHRP? No. Okay. So that part also we'll cover in the next session. So this is similar to router only, like your router AHRP, same comments. Okay. But okay, I'll explain. No problem. So we have interface level failover to cover. Okay. In the interface level, basically two things will be there. One will be your IP SLA, and second one will be your session. These concepts will be there. Okay. Then after this is remaining, then we have one session for clustering itself. One session your clustering will take. Then we have your transparent firewall concept. Okay. We have MPF, modular policy framework. And we have IS zone-based firewall. These 5 topics are remaining. These we have to complete. So tomorrow we'll start with the interface level failover, and along with this, we will cover about dynamic routing. That how you can enable dynamic routing. Yeah. So like this week we'll finish it. All right then. If no doubts, we'll wind up the session.